Game Changers was sown. So to see this sea of faces is just marvelous for me to see a sort of long-term effect of a conversation that I've had. So thank you for that introduction, Giles. I thought it would be fun to have a fairly interactive conversation. This isn't going to be a PowerPoint extravaganza. I have got a few slides, but they're really just as prompts. And Giles, you might need to give me screen share.
No problem. There we go. Should we have it now? That's a good point Tony made, actually. I forgot to mention the most important point is if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing this. He gave me the belief and impetus when I needed it to actually set this sort of thing up. So
I was just cheering you on from the sidelines. But it was a great conversation, and seriously, to see this group flourish in the way that it has just makes me very, very happy. So well done to you, Giles, but well done to all of you for making it what it is. So we have the world's lowest tech last-minute Google Slides. Please forgive any sort of design aspects because there aren't any. And we're going to start off, I thought, now we have an hour today. Is that right, Giles?
Yeah, we'd like to wrap things up by 9 if we can.
All right, wrap it up by 9. So values. So you did some work on that last time. What do you already know about values? What did you talk about?
Feel free to speak, anyone. Just chip in.
It's not a test.
You mean values like personal morals and what we stand by?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. Something personal morals and what we stand by. Yeah. Any other ideas?
What leads us?
What leads us? Fantastic. Yes. And I like the idea of leading rather than pushing. Pull versus push. Yeah. So what leads us? Anything else?
Almost like a code of what we live by.
A code for what we live by. Yes. It's all of those things. And the theory goes that if we live our lives in a way that, if we behave in a way that lets us live our values, then our life will go well. And likewise, if we don't get to live our values, at least it will be fairly mediocre. And if our values are compromised, then it will be pretty miserable. So often the first time people know about values is when one or more of them have been compromised. And if you've ever had one of those red mist moments, hopefully it's not just me, where all of a sudden you get really upset about something and you're kind of hijacked by it because you don't quite see it coming. Anybody had one of those? Yeah, just me.
All too often than I care to remember, to be honest.
So often, if not usually, that's because one or more of your values have been compromised. Okay, so that's what they are. And I'll give you some examples. So my values are love, creativity, nurturing, justice, harmony, commitment, and respect. They're my ones. And if I don't get to live all of those, I notice my life doesn't go very well. And if somebody crosses one of those, I'll know about it and they will shortly after. So often the way that we find out about our values is when they've been compromised. But there is another way to do it. And what I'm going to do is to share a link that maybe, Giles, you could circulate in the Slack afterwards, which is an online test you can take to do it. Often when working with coaches, we'll do it with a deck of cards, and we'll sort a big deck of 50 cards into stuff that's more important and less important, and then whittle it down to 5 or 6, something like that. But if you haven't got the deck of cards or somebody who can do that with you, then there are some online tests which help you. And as I say, you can discover them by when they're compromised, but that's not the best way to do it. And of course, so what? What's the point of knowing what your values are? Well, yes, living the perfect life, but also you can help other people live theirs, right? And maybe you can actively behave in a way to help other people live their values, or the least you can do is to not compromise them. So you can use them in team conversations to help everybody bring their full self to the work that you're doing. You can use them when you're having conversations with strangers. A typical example would be in an interview, of course. And if you go into an interview and saying, you know, these are the 5 things that I really care about, can you help me get them in this place? The chances are you'll have a very deep conversation very quickly. I don't know whether, Giles, you've had any experience of sharing that in job interviews.
I have, yeah. I think, I mean, you helped me still my values, which were health, optimism, love, respect, and cooperation. And I find that when I put together a presentation, it has a lot of those. I like to be present in a way that is optimistic, that includes a lot of revelations and positive, sort of, I suppose people say positive vibes, really. It's important always in an interview to pay respect and make sure that you caveat your opinions by things such as "in my opinion," and also then touch on experiences that relate back to your values, you know, love and cooperate. But yeah, it is important. It is important, and I think if you do a interview preparation correctly, all your values will come through. And when you talk about them, they actually are very valuable. And like you're quite right, you can have very deep conversations about it. Particularly in our line of work, we talk about having to relate to people. Well, what better ways to relate to people than with love, respect, and cooperation, which are 3 of my values. You know, how to relate to users. So we can bring those things in, you can weave them into the vignette, the conversation, as well as allow them to flourish and form the voice of your presentation.
Absolutely. And the final way that you can use them is to make decisions, because you can say, will option A let me live more of my values or compromise the fewest of mine, or option B? So, you know, if you're going after similar roles in different organizations, you can ask yourself those kind of questions. Which organization sort of seems to line up better with my values? And again, you'll find that the decisions you make as a result of doing that come quickly. You won't need to spend a lot of time in your head going round and round worrying if you've made the right decision, because it comes from something that is so very deep and fundamental to you.
I think as well, value set has been very useful for me in my work. If I'm in a meeting with someone and they say something that does go against my values, you can politely point out and say, you know, if you understand your own values, you can say that kind of doesn't sit very comfortably with me, and you can use them to form non-confrontational arguments. Also, I'm talking about that. My kids are kicking off in the background there. So they're very useful in those aspects as well.
That's right. And, you know, if I'll give you an example. I was working with 2 people who were butting heads quite often. And what was happening was that one was a project manager and one was, I think they were an account manager. And they kept scheduling things that creeped over into the other person's evening. And they didn't quite realize they were doing it, but it was driving them both to distraction. And did some work with both of them. It turns out, well, can you imagine what value might have been involved in people getting upset about being given stuff to do after hours? Any thoughts?
Maybe boundaries or work-life balance.
Yeah, exactly that. And the specific value was family. They both had very strong values about family, and one was giving the other stuff to do after hours so that they could live their value of family. And then, of course, the other person's, their value of family was being compromised, and they were getting upset. So as soon as we pointed this out, it's like, you both want the same thing. Now, how can you get that without compromising each other's values? And they solved it in 10 minutes. And this feud had been running on for weeks, I think. So again, they can be a very quick way to sort of find common ground and resolve conflict. Okay. Now, the main reason for me bringing them up here is that if we're thinking about, how many of you are building a portfolio at the moment? Yeah, okay. Now, if you're building a portfolio, you can use your values to drive your portfolio, because they're going to express, or your portfolio is going to express, what kind of person you are. So you might as well align it to your values. Yeah. If you had values that were misaligned with your portfolio, here's a great defense company. I did this great project for weapon sales. It's going to feel a bit icky when you talk about it. Whereas if you said, I did some work for the local, I don't know, think for an example of something that'd be in alignment with your values. Any ideas of portfolio pieces you could do?
I did a fitness app. I know they're a dime a dozen, but it's something which is aligns with my values, which is health and fitness. So it's quite easy to design and talk about, really. So
absolutely, yeah. And when you talk about it, how did you feel?
well, it's pretty easy, and I was passionate about it.
Right, and that comes across, of course.
Yeah.
Right. So use your values to choose what portfolio projects you do, and to maybe drop the ones that don't really. I mean, they might have been technically great projects, or the client might have been really, really happy. But if they don't represent your values, then maybe they don't deserve much space in your portfolio. Yeah. Because what you want to do when you're talking to either somebody who's going to hire you as an employee or on a contract or anything else, is to light up when you start talking about it. And if it's about something that's in alignment with your values, you will. Yeah. So that was a little bit about values. Any questions about values so far? Okay. Feel free to stay off mute, by the way, unless you've got sort of pneumatic drills outside. It's kind of nice to sort of have that sort of background sound and just feel like
you wouldn't want the background sound of my kids going to sleep.
It's all good. It's all good. Oh, I've got a raised hand here.
No. Oh, Monica, are you waiting to ask a question, or is that you? Are you still hand up in the portfolio?
Sorry, I'm just going to put my hand down.
All right. Nice to see a bit of interaction.
Actually, okay. Veronica, you're quite passionate about yoga, aren't you?
Yeah. I actually designed an app for my yoga collective, which is definitely going to go in my portfolio.
Yeah, good. And I'm the other thing about it, of course, is that the portfolio pieces that align with your values are the ones that you'll be up till 2 a.m, just tinkering away, polishing the pixels, long beyond it being perfect. So, it's going to be good quality work, I'm reckoning.
And I'll speak from example. I think it's important. You said then about when you talk about a project that aligns with your values, that you light up about it. Yeah. Obviously, Tony, you were very familiar with the Thornbury Nursing project that we worked on when I was.
Yeah.
But I loved working on that project. It aligned, not necessarily, I suppose it did align with my values in terms of a lot of aspects, but I think it wasn't, I couldn't put a particular value on it. It just, everything just fell into place on that project for me, and it felt fantastic. And that's why that's the one I've used in numerous presentations, because people have said, they've used these exact words, I light up when I talk about it, because it fills with so much more passion. And it's the one I used for my interview, even though I was interviewing for a telco company, because I wanted them to see how enthusiastic about it was and how much hard work I put into it and how much I practiced. And the presentation obviously came natural to me because I've done it so many times. They could see quite comfortably, if you can get this enthusiastic about something, we want to capture that enthusiasm and put that into our company, which is a nice bit of feedback I got from them. So it goes to explaining.
Yeah, I mean, and especially in an interview when you're a bit nervous about it, and once you start talking about something you're really passionate about, all of that goes out the window, and you just get on with it, and they'll see you for the kind of person that you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, there's nothing more about values. Going to move on to the next little bit, and that's this idea of the permissionless apprentice. Now, this is an idea. It's not my idea. It's from a chap called Jack Butcher. I don't know if any of you follow him on Twitter. He's doing some very interesting work in the design space. He's productizing design, and he seems to be making a fortune selling courses teaching people how to do this and how to visualize value specifically. So check him out on Twitter. Every tweet is just gold. And check out his courses. I've got several of them and they're great. However, I'm not an affiliate and I'm not paid to talk about him, but I love this idea. So an apprenticeship is when you help somebody who knows more than you in order to learn from them and leverage their network for free. Okay. So the idea of you helping somebody who knows more than you is the crucial bit here. And a permissionless apprentice doesn't wait to be asked. And what you do is you show up as their intern. And if you show up as their intern and you do good work for them, this becomes your portfolio. And here's the payback. When they share the work you've done for them, the value you've created for them, or when they're asked for a recommendation, or when they're looking to hire, who do you think is going to be top of mind? Probably before the job advert is even written. Because you've shown up and you've solved a problem for them by creating some value. So for example, let's say you knew somebody who was let's say a prolific tweeter, right? One of the problems that people like that have is that actually distilling what they know down into something that is more digestible and slightly longer form, or more visualized, for example, they don't know how to do that. But you may well know how to do that. So you create an asset that is valuable to them. And then they go, wow, Katie, that is so cool. Let me share that with my followers, or 200,000 of them. And before you know it, you've got a bestseller. Yeah. Now, this is not like, being a musician where they sort of like just promise you exposure if you turn up and play for free. It's not kind of like that, because at this point, you're still in the apprentice stage. You're not in the professional stage, right? But if you use your values to target your permissionless apprenticeships, you're going to be interning for somebody who really lights you up. Yeah. So, for example, when Oliver building the fitness app, it might have been that he could be solving a problem that somebody he finds inspirational in the fitness space was experiencing. And if in doing so, and they see his app, they're probably going to promote his work, right? Stands to reason. Maybe there's a fitness celebrity who doesn't have an app, or has an app that doesn't work very well, doing some work on how they can make it 100 times better because you're one of their fans, is the kind of thing that's going to get their attention. Yeah. But the key thing here is for it, so it doesn't feel like a drudge, line it up with your values. Yeah. Don't go doing a permissionless apprentice for somebody that you wouldn't give the time of day to, because you're not going to enjoy it and you're not going to get on even if you do the work. Yeah. Any questions about, well, here we are. Oh, and of course, the final thing is that as you do this, you create your portfolio. Yeah. By the end of it, you've got a portfolio that's totally driven by your values and created for really inspiring, influential, cool, whatever people that you really relate to.
Are you saying, Tony, that as someone who is looking to build their portfolio along their own value set, break into the industry, a good thing would be to, like you say, understand your values, select a person or an organization that fits within your values, identify an area where you could do some work with it, maybe come up with your own project and then present it to them, or and that in itself will hopefully get some sort of recognition come back at them. I mean, years ago back in New Zealand, one of the things I used to do to people, we did something very similar. We would actually target companies who shared our values as a company. And then it almost instantly give us we'd know how they would like to be approached. So we'd approach them in some sort of clever, creative way, and then say, we've been thinking about your business. We've got some great ideas. Admittedly, then, oh, lovely, fantastic. Let's book some time in. Admittedly, then we'll have to go away and come up with the ideas, but it's kind of a reverse thing. But basically, so you're saying if people come up with something, and then get in touch with people and say, I was looking at your business and this is the kind of thing I think would be great. And hopefully there might be some leverage off that. But at the very least, you're going to start to align your portfolio with a lot of things that you believe in.
Well, and it's even absolutely that, but it's even more than that. It's not just proposing something, it's actually doing something that delivers some value. So, for example, if one of your values is around equality and you're particularly mindful of accessibility and the importance of that, finding an organization that aligns with your values, who their accessibility is not good, is there something you can do to make it better without them having to sort of go through long approval processes? You want the kind of thing where they say, oh, got it.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you might go put something together and then go back to them and say, I was just doing some, I noticed there was a few issues in the site, I've come up with this.
Right. Yeah. And it, you know, even could be as simple as, you know, you've got PDFs on your website that aren't screen reader accessible, or they're not, you know, large print, or, you know, whatever it is, right? How about I make over some of these? Here you are, here's your top ones. And I've just done a makeover that would be suitable for people with vision impairment, right? Or I've recorded them as MP3 files so that whatever it is, you know, do something that adds value where they turn around and say, you know what, we hadn't thought about that, and we love what you've done. Thank you. And then whether they hire you or share your work or whatever it is, you know, that's the outcome. Yeah. So it's the key point is that it's working in a very aligned way, rather than just, you know, if you just go and do some random work for an organization that you don't really care about, you won't enjoy it. And actually on the receiving end, it might just seem a bit desperate, you know. And, you know, this is a bit, in a bizarre way, this is a bit like dating, right? You know, and desperate is never a good look for dating, right? You would just want to show up and be yourself, and, you know, you don't want to be desperate. So if you are working in alignment with your values, much more likely to be, much less likely to be desperate. Yeah. So any thoughts on that?
I think, Tony, I was just going to say, which, you know, what you probably would have gone on to say yourself as well, and it's quite obvious that if you end up doing work for companies that you have no sort of interest in really, and then they, you know, and you end up doing it, they will then sort of recommend you to other companies that you've got no interest in, and then you end up doing a job that you're not interested in for years on end.
Welcome to the rest of your life, right? And this is the thing, you know, if you get to choose who you work with and the value you create and for who the end customer is. So you might as well choose something that lights you up. Yeah. So I hadn't actually thought about sort of the ripple effect of like this never-ending nightmare of getting recommended for work that you'd hate doing. Yeah. And I suppose you could always, and again, if you're not desperate, you can always then say no.
Yeah, true.
You know, the danger would be that if you were desperate and you thought, well, I have to take this because there's no other work out there, and then all of a sudden scarcity kicks in and it ensures that other work. So, yeah.
Another military company. Oh, go on then.
Oh, I'm really good at military stuff that I hate. You know, and people, you know, it's like it with jobs sometimes. You know, we get into something and it's like, it's okay at the time, but then, you know, it's like, how did I get here? You know? Yeah. So while you've got a chance, while you're starting your, you know, building a portfolio and starting to make a name for yourself as the brilliant designer that you are, you might as well do it in the direction you want to go in. Yeah.
Keep it interesting.
Keep it interesting. And as I said before, you'll do your best work, especially if it's not just the organization that you can really relate to, but their end user or customer, whoever they are. You know, if you can, the more customer empathy or user empathy you've personally got, the better the job you're going to do. Actually, the value you would add is that, of course, companies without brilliant UX teams often make lots of assumptions about what users need and what they don't need. And if you're somebody who's got empathy with the user, you'll quickly realize that that's not the case. So you can build the thing that the company was never expecting. Yeah, which would be the thing that wowed them.
Tony, could I just ask you a question? What's your opinion on doing work as part of the interview process? I know there's a lot of the guys who bring it up on our channel and they say, you know, I've been asked to do this task for an interview, and I was one of those myself when I was interviewing, and the job that I actually got was through completing a task for them. I just wondered what your opinion was on that and what sort of value you think it adds. Was
it live during the interview, or was it just like before the interview you had to go away and do it?
Yeah, it was before the interview. Yeah, they set me a little brief to kind of get on with and stuff. And at the time, like, I think you hit the nail on the head just a minute ago. You know, you do it because, you know, you want that job and you want that role. So I just wondered what your opinion was on it, really.
Well, in the software industry, which is where I met Giles, we used to do a lot of that. And it's pretty much phased out now. In that, you know, it shows at a point in time. The thing is that as the recruiter, you don't know how long somebody spent doing that. You know, we don't know if you've been up all night for a whole week trying to do that thing. So while what you create might look like it does what we need it to do, it doesn't really tell us about what it's like to work with you, or, you know, how easily you found it to understand the brief and do it. And of course, you know, that's, if you're applying for 20 jobs, you've just got a new job doing tests for, you know, to try and get a job, you know, and it's brutal. So I guess my diplomatic answer would be, if you have a choice between a company that does do that and one that doesn't, maybe that tells you about the one that you want to work for.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
It's an interesting point you bring up, actually, Rob, because I know that Ollie has actually got an interview. I think it's tomorrow, isn't it, Ollie?
No, Thursday now.
Thursday, and he's been doing work this week, and I had a bit of a chat with him the other day, and we had a look through the brief together. And I think this is probably why, I wanted Tony to present to you all, because this sort of thing resonates very much with me as well. And I was explaining to Ollie, you know, okay, yeah, you got to put some stuff together, granted, but quite right, like Tony says, someone can pour 1 week, 24 hours a day for 1 week's worth of work into it. Someone can spend 2 evenings. Someone might be just better at Sketch or whatever program they're using, so they might be able to shortcut and do a damn sight more work than someone who might have spent a lot longer. That doesn't go to show difference of how someone is to work with. It just shows that someone's particularly better at one program. That's all. I mean, that person can learn that program in the company. That's irrelevant. But if you can put together a piece of work that, if you have to do this, that is along the lines of your values, that does speak to what you want, that speaks to the difference you want to make in their company as Ollie or as Giles or as Rob or as Kevin or whatever, then when you present that will come across.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, then it'll be you presenting, not just a designer who happens to know Sketch very well. And they will pick up on those things. You'll have the side conversations. You'll talk about values. You'll talk about other aspects. It'll be relaxed. They'll see the passion. They'll see underneath the facade of the nerves that people have. And they'll go, you know what? This bloke, yeah, he wasn't as good as Sketch as the last person, but I really want to work with this person. When the shit's the fan of business, that's the kind of guy I want in my corner, because I know he'll step up. That's when those sort of things can come to the fore.
On the flip side, Giles and Tony, for that, do you think we are right, and I know Ollie put this in the group, to stand by our own values when we can call out companies who are taking the piss in terms of asking us to do too much, or you can clearly see that they're using our projects that we're going to put forward to just take them and use them for idea creation?
Well, what kind of organization would they be like to work for if they're doing all of that?
Yeah, Tony, I'll tell you about experience I've had today, actually. So this is apart from the one Giles just discussed. So it was for a junior position, and they wanted me, so they sent me their complete brand guidelines. I had to basically sign a confidentiality agreement, and they sent me their complete UI assets. So they were looking for a brand new app from creation. And I had to reply to them. I just said, I think it's completely unreasonable when you haven't even offered me an interview yet. So essentially, they're getting a bunch of juniors to design an app from scratch just for free. And I couldn't go through with it. I replied, said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. But it's totally unreasonable what you're asking from people.
And which of your values felt a bit squashed by that?
Oh, there was several.
Go on.
I think the first one was to exercise a bit of restraint with my language on the email. But it was more a sense that I think my time wasn't being valued.
Right.
And I think I've got no problem doing work for free. I guess it did align with straight away. I didn't really get that great of a feel for the company. So the kind of work I'm doing for my interview on Thursday, I mean, Autumn's on the call. It's her company. I'm excited to speak with them. So I've got no issue with doing the work, you know.
Well, there you go. That tells you a lot about the kind of organization and how you're going to show up if you did get the job.
Yeah.
You know,
In a nutshell, who wants to jump through hoops for a company that you don't want to work for? You know,
and here's another point to make. Now, Rob, it was your question originally, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Who, if you did a permissionless apprenticeship, who would you do it for? Is there anybody that comes to mind where you're like really aligned with what they're doing, inspired by them, would jump at an opportunity?
I can think of an agency that I'd like to work for, yeah, that's fairly local to me. Yeah.
So if you did permissionless apprenticeship, and actually, no, let's not think about one that's going to hire you for a second. Let's think about somebody else. We'll come on to the hiring one in a minute. Is there like, I mean, what are your interests?
Sorry, who was that aimed at, that question?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was
Sorry,
aimed at
Rob.
me. It's all right, mate, don't worry. I was sort of like thinking about it, and then you jumped off. Okay. So my interest, I mean, you know, football, golf, you know, big sports person. Yeah, let's just throw them in there.
So who's a sports person you think that you could add some value to with your skill?
My football team, definitely, because there's a few opinions I could give on it.
Yeah.
I can see Giles laughing at
that. And with your design skill?
Not too sure about the design skills, but from the side, as a coach, I could give a few.
Well, here's the thing. If you do a permissionless apprenticeship for an organization or somebody you really rate, and everybody else happens to rate, by the way, when you turn in your portfolio as part of your application, they're going to be like, oh, this was endorsed by whoever.
Birmingham City Football Club.
You're going to jump, well, hopefully you jump the queue. I mean, with football, you never know, it could go one or the other. But, you know, if you pick something a little less divisive, that, you know, it could be the thing that gets you up the top of the queue, because they will say, if it was good enough for that person, and if it's genuine, then it answers a lot of questions. So you get that kind of halo effect.
Think as well, like if a company is worth working for, they ask you, like, especially in agencies, like what your dream client would be. It's their chance to see what your values are and if they align with what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you don't align, then, you know, see if you can find somewhere else. Because, you know, again, if you're a designer working on stuff you hate, how does that go for your design process, your creative process? Will you be doing your best work?
No.
You'll be living for the paycheck, basically.
Yeah. You'll be pushing pixels for the point of it, for, you know, pointlessly. So, and that's especially important with creatives, us creatives. I mean, we're all creative, right? If we're not aligned with the thing we're trying to create, it won't ever go very well. Because you can't fake it, because it comes from somewhere deep inside. Yeah. So, any more questions on permissionless apprenticeships? And then we'll have one more little section, and then we'll have just an open conversation, if you like. How are we doing for time? 20 to 9 already. Gosh. Okay. Storytelling. Well, a simple 5-step framework here, which might be useful to you. Now, stories are powerful, right? I mean, that's what we've been telling each other for like millennia. That's how, you know, we communicated before TikTok. In fact, we use TikTok to tell stories too. Right now, one of the reasons for raising storytelling is that, often we have a need to tell people about what we've done and what we've achieved and what we've created. And sometimes that feels a bit, braggy. And for some of us, that doesn't sit very comfortably, right? Because if you're in a conversation with, I did this, I did that, as much as anything, it might be boring for the other person. But actually, for many of us, we don't want to be in that conversation anyway. Yeah. Alternatively, we could tell a story about what we did. What was the story behind that portfolio piece, for example? So people ask me about coaching, for example, and I might say something like this. Well, I had this new coaching client last month. Let's call her Barbara. And she spent most of our life working as an accountant. And she enjoyed the technical aspect of the role, but she's feeling a bit unfulfilled. There was something missing from her life, and she couldn't really pinpoint it, and she's feeling rather stuck. And she told her story. She began to realize that she'd always wanted to draw and paint, but she'd never really tried. And before long, she was researching art classes, and eventually she found a tutor who could fit around her schedule. And she's now massively enjoying her new hobby, and it brings her a lot of relief from the world of spreadsheets. And she's quite happy still being an accountant, but she's found that thing that was missing in her life. And she said, sometimes you just have to talk to someone who knows how to listen in order to find a solution. And she's right, isn't she? Now, that's a little story about what I do. How many times did I mention me?
Not once.
The first word.
Was it?
Yeah, I had a new coaching client. Yeah. The rest of the story, who's it about?
Barbara.
About Barbara. And Barbara is the hero in this story. It wasn't me saying, well, because I have listening superpowers, I helped Barbara unlock the secrets of, eternal happiness. Right? I made Barbara the hero, who was doing the research and finding the tutors and, doing the work. Yeah. So by telling the story, I was talking about what I do, but I wasn't talking about me. Yeah. So this is a simple little formula you can use. The first bit is the setting. This is where you introduce the characters, paint the picture, let us get to know a little bit about the people or the organization that is the hero of the story. The complication. So this was kind of what wasn't going well. Yeah. So, the dog sanctuary, they had this problem with landing page optimization. And so, all the Jack Russells were getting left in the kennels. Right? The turning point. When was the beginning? What was the aha that began to create the change? Yeah. This was Barbara realizing she wanted to draw and paint, but she'd never done so. And then what was the resolution? How did it go? How did it turn out? Barbara's now busy painting. And crucially, the last bit is the moral or the why of the story. This is the takeaway you want them to take away. Right? And then Barbara's saying, sometimes you just have to talk to someone who knows how to listen in order to find a solution. And that's me. Right? It's the kind of, in parenthesis, and this is the bit that I made possible, and that's why it's important. Yeah. So this is a really simple formula. Most stories can be fitted into this. And said, make your client the hero or the organization. Don't make it about you. I did this, I did that. No. Find a way to tell it to make the other person the hero. because when you tell the story, you won't feel like you're bragging. Now, there are some other benefits to creating a story. What could they be?
You get to bring emotion.
Yeah.
Enter.
Especially in the complication.
Sorry?
Especially in the complication, step 2.
Yeah. And I think when you bring an emotion in any story connects with people more so than
Empathy.
Exactly, empathy. Yeah.
Absolutely. What else? What other benefits could come from telling it as a story?
I think it makes you stand out as a candidate as well. If you've had a recruiter asking the same question 10 times that morning, they're going to remember you.
Right. Yeah, they'll remember you for telling a story, and they'll probably remember something about the story as well. Yeah,
makes them feel good as well.
If you're talking about emotion as well, you've got empathy with the user and the company.
Right. You can imagine somebody leaning in a little bit just to listen to what you've got to say. Whereas if everybody else just says, I did this, I did that, I know how to do this in Figma, it's like, well, great, but it doesn't tell me much about you.
And it relates.
It'll make it easier to follow.
Sorry, Autumn.
It will make it easier to follow as well, because it will naturally have like a start, middle, and ending instead of thoughts that are just like jotting about all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, so you get this structure that brings the ease of understanding. And they might not remember all the detail of the story. That doesn't matter. We don't care whether it was Barbara or Brian or spreadsheets or whatever it was. That isn't the important thing. If I was telling this story to an architect, I might change it to architect because the story is still the same. But it might land better with an architect if it was about an architect. So by telling a story, you create a much better possibility of it landing with the audience. You ever sat listening to a story about somebody like you and thought, oh yeah, I went through that, or oh, that's a bit like me. What are you more likely to do?
Everyone would have gone through a framework like this at some point in their life as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about the situation. Oh yeah, just because you didn't want to take a drawing class or an art class doesn't mean you can't resonate with the actual aspects and the cadence of the story.
Yeah.
So in a way that opens up opportunity for diverse conversation, which in turn will breed connections with the person's interviewing it.
Absolutely.
Like Michael Parkinson when he used to interview people, basically. He'd listen to go off on one.
Yeah. Any other benefits from telling stories?
They're quite fun.
They are fun. You can make them fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't all have to be tear jerkers. And in fact, the more fun you make them, the better somebody's going to feel when they're listening.
It shows the people interviewing you that you've got personality as well. It kind of it makes it a little bit more informal. If you
just a story.
Yeah. And I think when you go to a lot of these interviews, you might be this expert whiz kid in everything technical, but you've got no personality. I think a lot of these companies want to see that you've got personality as well as the sort of or even maybe more so the personality than the technical sort of knowledge of how to fix things or make things.
Sure.
Because if you can fit in with a team of people working in a studio with a good personality, I think it probably goes a lot further than that sort of like introverted like programming kid that sits in the corner and works till 10 o'clock every night when everybody's gone home, or having a beer at 5 o'clock.
Well, and especially in your business, you're all about talking to other people and trying to create stuff that makes their life whatever way it needs to be. You can't do that in a vacuum, can you?
What's really interesting about this point here is it resonates actually with something I did last week, this week as well, coincidentally enough, when we were looking at the homepage of the new website we're building. And of course, we've done some research and user testing as to what we feel a user wants to see when they land on here. And we've tested some bits and bobs. But we've got all these slices in the design system. We're putting stuff together. And we looked at it as a team and said, we actually need to write a story on this page. And my manager goes, Charles, do you write a story for the homepage? I went, yeah, sure. We've never really written a story for a homepage or a page, to be honest. I just thought, I'll write something. So I kind of wrote us as a brand talking to a user and allowed just put stuff down, allowed dialogue, allowed emotion, allowed helping people and use those nice terminologies that could that was like a conversation in a way. And after that, I then started to that sounds quite clever now, actually, but I'll talk about it. But I started to align the paragraphs I'd put together with the values that we have as a company and the values that we want to hold dear to our clients. And I was able to actually, in the end, inform. I totally revised the whole layout, made some changes, and then I presented it back, and then people really, really liked it because it had a sense of not just slices of information put in front of people. It actually had a story behind it, had an empathy, had a journey. When someone lands on the homepage, they'll go on something. And when you can support it with nice dialogue, a nice story, and I think everyone liked it because it made sense to everyone. And it was quite nice when I read out my story of how talk to our customers. And so it's interesting you bring that up now, actually, because that is quite relevant to what I did last week. So I think when we think of our work as well, everyone knows in this group, there's absolutely scope. My opinion is user testing is fundamental, but I believe it can be quite cold in how we find out about how people actually operate as humans, not just users in a laboratory setting. And I think using storytelling like this, as designers, we can really empathize and reach people in a way that often some laboratory user testing can't.
Yeah, it shows you've got imagination.
Which is probably a core competency, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's not natural to a lot of people who've been stuck in that sort of like office environment all their life, and when they see people come along, like you say, and you made that example, Giles, of what you just said, I think their ears sort of prick up a little bit and, oh, this guy's actually quite interesting. We could. And
especially if you're telling a story that's where you're not the hero.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's interesting and he's not full of himself. I mean, that's
this guy.
Quite a good outcome, isn't it? There's one other benefit to telling stories that I wanted to squeeze in, and that is that a good story is a gift to somebody who likes to tell stories. A good story is a gift to somebody who likes to tell stories. So I was working with some lawyers the other week, and they have a similar problem. They do all these projects, and it's quite a dry thing that they do mostly, because they weren't working in sort of TV crime sort of investigations. It's sort of something a lot more mundane than that. And we talked about storytelling, so that they could share the kind of cases that they've been working on with a wider audience, and that could be their colleagues, or it could be their other clients. Oh, here's a story from a case that we did with somebody else. Wouldn't name them, of course. But one of the things they realized they could do is they could tell their stories to people who might bring them business, whether that's a senior partner or somebody else who refers people into the organization. And of course, those kind of people are always looking for content. Yeah, they're always looking for reasons to go out to their client base and talk to them. So if you give them a gift of a story, that gives them an opportunity to do that. Yeah. So the really cool thing is when stories start being told when you're not in the room. And then before you know it, your influence has gone up massively. So for example, I talked about Jack Butcher. I didn't tell a story about him, I just mentioned him. But he's not in the room. He's not my friend. He doesn't pay me. And yet I talked about him. And I know that at least one of you is probably going to go and check out who Jack Butcher was. And that's the thing. When your name, your brand, your reputation, the things you bring to the world get transmitted even when you're not there, then you're really onto something. Yeah. So if you are a designer who's got something really important to say about whatever it is that's really important to you, if you can tell a story that lands in the right way with the right people, they will tell it. Yeah. Or it could be recruiters talking to a hiring company. I've got this great candidate because they told me this story the other day about what they've been doing with their work. Yeah. So, talk about your permissionless apprenticeships and portfolio pieces and case studies in interviews or applications using a story format. Use this to share, to talk about the value of what you do. And let me know what happens. Is that a good place to stop?
That's a great place to stop, Tony. Thank you for that. Well, that was I'm obviously familiar with a lot of this stuff, but every time I hear you talk and get on board with this sort of thing, it takes me in different directions. That's always educational. Well, makes me reflect and want to make my stamp on my career a lot better and approach me a different way as well. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
I wish we had more time, Tony.
Well, I've got nothing else to do, so we can kick around and have a cup of tea and talk about this stuff. I mean, I don't mind. Feel free to stay on for a bit if you want.
That was really interesting.
Questions or comments or anything else? Anybody who we've not maybe heard from got anything to add? Oh, Lacey.
Hello. Sorry, forgot how to unmute for a moment there. My question is, what if you're someone who doesn't enjoy telling stories? Are there any strategies, good strategies for doing that? If it's not natural to you, if it's not intuitive.
Well, here's the thing. You don't need to imagine you're on stage or on telly. I'm now going to tell you a story, right? It's just a part of the conversation. And you can, in a conversation, you can say, oh God, that reminds me of a time when I worked with so-and-so, and this is what happened. And before you know it, you're telling the story before you realize you've done it. Yeah. So keep them short. And the one I gave is maybe even a bit too long. And have a few stories that you feel comfortable telling that represent different aspects of things that are important to you. Yeah. And just practice dropping them in conversations. The thing is, you might not feel comfortable with it, but most people love to hear a story. We just want to be entertained or taken off into a different world, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. Because that's how, as human beings, we've transmitted knowledge and wisdom, right? It's kind of built into us. As soon as you start telling a story, most people will lean in just a little bit. So in a roundabout way, I'd say, have some stories, keep them short, practice telling them, and don't make a big deal out of it. You're not on stage. You're not in front of a room of thousands of people. You're just with one other person having a conversation. Or even just write your stories and share them that way. There's lots of ways to tell a story.
Tony, can I just get you to take off the presentation so we can see everyone's faces? Yeah. That's a very good point, and it goes right back to what we said about values. If you tell a story from the point of your values, you'll always be comfortable talking about them.
Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, most of us can't stop when we're talking about our values. So you have the other problem.
I can't stop talking anyway, full stop. So.
Any other thoughts or questions or ideas? No?
There's probably loads we can talk about. I don't know. My mind is fried.
You were up
It's
early
getting late.
doing your work,
4:30.
mate.
Woke up and no alarm. Just got up and my mind started going instantly. I was like, well, that's it. I'm getting out of bed.
That's quite nice, though. It shows that you tapped into something that was stimulating you.
Or
And I
coffee.
gave up the caffeine as well. So I'm drinking decaf as well. So that's not helping too much.
Well,
Tony, can I just ask, I know me and Ollie were kind of guinea pigs in filling out, you're going to send a link round to everybody. What do you want us to do with it, or the key takeaways from it, if we are filling it out?
well, take time to read what the report tells you, and yeah, and see how you're applying it in your life, because it will give you some clues as to, it could be, for example, that right now all of your values are around, the basics of sort of like staying alive as a human being. And then as you get to the top, it's the ones about self-actualization and changing the world and, all that kind of stuff. And most of us are sort of somewhere in the middle. And the idea is that, ultimately you can start to sort of move towards the top. Yeah.
For those where Tony's got sent me a link that I forwarded on to Katie and Ollie to fill in, just to get an idea of how it can unearth some of their own values that they may not be aware that they have, I suppose, in a way, to get them to identify with them. And he'll share that link with me. I'll pop in the Slack channel so you can all go and explore that side of your personality, I suppose, that can hopefully lend a good springboard to implement a lot of what we've spoken about today. That should be. Also, when I was working with Tony a few times, we did a lot of work on Enneagram stuff. So I don't Tony, which was
that's another talk.
That is scary. If you want to all of a sudden look in a mirror on a piece of paper and go, "Oh my God, how is that me on a piece of paper?" I thought I was individual, but I'm not. It's actually quite scary.
What was that called, Giles?
Enneagram. Is that what, Tony? Enneagram? Yeah.
Yes, Enneagram. I will put a link in the chat. How about that?
That's fascinating stuff, that is. And that again, I find things like that gives you confidence is even the wrong word, but it just gives you peace that it's okay to be you.
Yeah, you don't need to change a thing.
Exactly. And you're all right to, and there's a lot nowadays about being said, living in the moment. It certainly helped me live in the moment a lot, because it stops you second guessing or worrying about the future or this, that, and the other, because you know where a lot of your opinions, a lot of your motivations and your actions are coming from. And you don't have to keep questioning, well, trying to change them even, because you can just understand them. And if you understand them, then you're much more in control. And I find the Enneagram stuff. Tony's put a link in the chat there, but I'll grab some of these and pop them in the Slack channels and stuff. But I would wholeheartedly recommend that you take a look at those sort of stuff.
If you all do the second link, which is the values assessment, it would be quite an interesting conversation for you as a group to have between you about what you've discovered and about what you have in common and what you have, what's different, and begin to practice talking about that.
Yeah, I think that stuff would really come out well. I mean, we've talked a lot about how we present ourselves in interviews, and you can have your own voice, and you can have your own sense of confidence, and your own sense of worth, and your own. Like we say, you can eventually get involved in things that you understand floats your boat, and it goes out from there. One of the things that Tony helped me with when I went on to furlough was setting up this group, and it's given me such a massive sense of belief and like something that I love doing. That I actually, for me, coincidentally today, I had a conversation with an old student I used to work with an old guy at Newton University who's since become in charge of the courses at my old university. He wants me to come and be on the board of the new MA sort of stuff because he heard about the work I was doing with people. people, you know, and get involved in teaching and get involved with presenting to them and all that sort of stuff. And you talked about, you know, you get one job that floats your boat, another one that it emanates, and you go down the right path. And now all of a sudden I find myself going down a path that I'm very excited about. A lot of it I would put is down to this sort of stuff.
Yay!
And hopefully this Game Changers can go on as long as it possibly can with all of your help. And again, that's led me to find similar people online who are going to help, people like Ed Dixon that you've met, people like Paul Lingby-Trow that some of you have met, who are going to come on and help co-present, get involved, organise it, and hopefully grow it. And then you
and you know why that is, don't you, Giles?
Well, I think people believe what I believe.
Well, because you tell a good story about what
Yeah.
is here, this community.
Yeah. That's good. I think it's a good testament to everyone who keeps coming back here, even people who have got full-time employment now. We don't need to use this group to find a new career. They use it because I think we share stuff, because we all, I suppose, we all connect on a level that our personalities allow it to, which is fantastic, I think.
How cool is that?
Immeasurably.
I agree.
Even when Kev turned up my door with a bottle of gin. It's slightly stalkerish, but
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Dave. It's been utterly wonderful, by the way. Incredibly important, the story side. Thanks, Tony. Oh, well, get well.
Yeah, get well, Dave.
Yeah.
Get well. We're all rooting for you.
Let's see your face, Dave.
Damn, you look like shit.
Very well. I'm glad that you could stay on and get some value from it, despite feeling rubbish. So get well.
Good that you're on the mend, though, mate. But guys, it's 9:05. Those that want to drop off, please feel free. We can look to wrap this up now as well. As ever on these sessions, I encourage you to seek out people that have done the presenting, such as Tony on LinkedIn, make a connection with him, and you know, just grow your network, speak to people, speak to Tony, ask some questions now and again, and just you know, look to create one thing Tony taught me once was creating a network of people that could help me, rather than creating a network of people who probably didn't share my values, and if I'm brutally honest, only sapped my energy and made me go down in the wrong direction. So yeah, look to connect with each other, look to connect with Tony, and hopefully we can all crack on in 2021 once all this is behind us, and live very prosperous remainder of the year. So I just want to thank you, Tony, for your time today. Much appreciated. Enlightening for me as ever, and I'm quite sure it'll be enlightening for everyone else. Some of the private messages that came on the Slack channel certainly allude to that, as well as the comments on this channel here. So thank you for your time and the effort you've put in. Always much appreciated.
You're very welcome. As I say, it's wonderful to see this group flourish, and I wish you all well. And you know, I'm sure that I'll be hearing some stories about what happens next.
You most definitely will. We'll let you go now, Tony, and some people want to stay on. We can have a bit of a natter afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
And
yeah, cheers, Tony. That was really helpful. I got a lot out of that. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks. Oh, I've got a round of applause from Lacey there as well.
Very good. There you go. Literally, I can hear the applause from across the Atlantic.
Ah, there we are. No, good luck with everything.
Thanks, mate. I'll let you go.
Thanks, Tony.
Cheers, Tony.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. So anyone else that wants to stay on, please do. And we can have a natter. Tony, you're still here, Tony? Unless you want to.
Oh, am I supposed to go as well now? Okay, right, yes.
Yeah, you can stay if you want. We're just gonna talk about you and send just to make sure that everyone's happy, and if there's any questions you want to follow up on. But
I better go then.
right, off you go.
It's really great to meet you all.
Yeah,
Take care.
take it easy.
Cheers, Tony.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Tony.
Bye.
I'll just stop the recording there.